Hey everybody and welcome back. We've got some exciting and very interesting news today. This might be one of the biggest announcements Equinox has made since the release of the game. This is the Trial by Frost season patch, and there's a lot of stuff in here. This was a crazy read. I'm going to put it in the description, so if you want to follow along, feel free to open that up. Within this article, we're going to learn a little bit about how Equinox plans to handle balances moving forward, and yeah, they're going to kick things off with a pretty big patch that impacts a lot of pretty high profile cards. So, yeah, this one's a doozy. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, especially after these changes. I'm really excited to bring you some hot takes and exciting decks in the coming weeks. You don't want to miss it. Now, let's jump into this. They start things out by referencing the Robin Hood nerf and talking about how they've learned a lot since then. I think that was probably a good opportunity to prepare them for a bigger patch like the one we're going to see today. They mention here the state of the game and like the patch schedule. So I think that this first part here about community milestones and predictable updates, honestly, this is something I'm really excited for. They're saying here that they're going to be basically scheduling their balance changes basically. And so I think that predictability will be really nice for a lot of players so that they can have a little bit more confidence in the cards that they buy, knowing like, oh, I'm going to have at least like 2 months or something before the next patch will be, so that they can just like have a little bit more confidence in buying, possibly even like sell cards when they know a patch is coming up or something. And it won't be like as much as a surprise as like this one is going to be possibly today for a lot of you. They do still say though that they're going to keep flexibility for emergencies, which I think is important. Yeah, if anything maybe unexpected is too crazy, I definitely don't want them feeling like they have to leave it out there for 2 months. The consistent 2 month to 2 month patches that we're going to see, it's going to be at the start of an expansion in the middle. That honestly seems like perfect timing to me. At the start of an expansion means that they can maybe take away anything that gets too strong in the new set or has like unintended interactions with the new cards. And halfway through the set, I think is a great opportunity to kind of rebalance the meta and shake things up when they're getting a little stale. So yeah, honestly, those seem like the perfect times to me. Making the right call between errata, suspensions, and bans. Right away, they say that they feel like bans is kind of unfortunate and they don't want to see them often in Altered. Not only for players who never get to see that card again, but also for the designers who feel like it was like a missed opportunity to maybe tweak it a little bit more and get it right. I think that makes a lot of sense, and they say kind of it seems that errata is their desired result, trying to just readjust the card to a playable state that they think is like healthy for the metagame. Suspensions here is now like the third thing they're mentioning. I think this is pretty cool. Basically, they're gonna use it as a way to like temporarily ban a card until they can come up with an errata that they think is like gonna fit it well. Honestly, that's a pretty good idea because they do mention like they only want to do an errata one time, and so I think that yeah, it would be unfortunate if they got an errata wrong and then they like stick to it and like the card's like never playable or something. So honestly, suspensions does seem like the way to go so that they can have plenty of time to yeah, maybe like test all the options until they can find a version of the card that will be enjoyable to play but not oppressive. They're going to be doing a suspension where you won't be able to use the card at all online or in tournaments until it's errataed. I feel like that is an interesting way to go because it means that those decks, especially like if they centered around that card or it's really key, might just be like not an option to play until you get the card back. I feel like they could definitely consider in the future having like a warning that a card is in review while still letting us play it temporarily until the errata is decided on, especially if it's not like detrimental to the game. Like most of the ones we're going to see today, I feel like the meta's been fine with them around. This patch will be considered effective with the release of this article. So yeah, a little bit of kind of like a blind side here. No warning. If you were going into a tournament tomorrow, your cards are already going to be hit. And if you want to play online, it sounds like they're not able to implement the digital patch immediately. So maybe you can get a couple extra games in there with some of your favorite cards. But it's pretty much as soon as possible they're going to be implementing this. All right, now let's look at the actual changes. I'm going to be starting with the uniques, and there's a couple of them. This first one I think is the least surprising of everything on here because as soon as this card saw the light of day, there were already posts from Equinox and different like Equinox team members saying that it was going to be addressed. So this is something that they didn't wait to address. It was apparently an accident or maybe like unintended for these lines of text to appear in this version together. It was supposed to have maybe like a condition that it could only target another character. If we read it here, you'll see what I mean. It says, if I would gain fleeting, I gain a boost instead. When a character you control gains one or more boosts, you may have target character gain fleeting. Basically, you could have this give itself fleeting to gain a boost to be able to give itself fleeting again over and over and over. And not only is this infinite stats in one expedition, but because it does lose fleeting or essentially never gains fleeting, you'd be able to do this every day for the rest of the game. Yeah, this seems really crazy. I'm not sure how many instances of this there are out there, but this one specifically has been posted all over the place. It makes sense to get rid of this, especially really fast. I think that hopefully things like this will become less and less common in the future, because it is a little bit feels bad to open a card even in like before the official release of the game in a pre-release and already have it like get nerfed before you like even get to try it out or something. But it's pretty understandable here because this power level is way above like anything currently in Altered. It wouldn't really have a place, so I'm glad that they're taking care of it. There's a little bit of collateral damage here with all of the all of the versions of this in unique form, both factions being suspended regardless of like the effects on them. So hopefully Equinox can come up with the errata for these pretty soon and put it into place so everyone else who has one of these that is more balanced can get the chance to use it. I'm sure though that they're working on it, and we don't really have anything to worry there. This is the only card name in here that is from Trial by Frost. The rest are going to be from Beyond the Gates, and this next one has been talked about frequently. There was an article that showed this effect even before the original release of the game when they were just announcing uniques. People have been talking about this effect for so long now. It's the hotly debated Foundry Armorers. This one's in French, but basically this one says, if a character you control gains a boost, so not just itself, any character, then you get to summon one of the 2/2/2 Brass Bug robot tokens. And I believe as well that this first line here says you may put a card from your hand in reserve to make a character you control gain a boost, meaning that even day one in Basira, you could boost this card and then use Basira again to get 2 free Brass Bugs plus 2 boosts and this. It's incredible. There's a lot of other ones that maybe aren't quite as good as this, but they're still extremely powerful. And because of that, all Bravos Armorers are going to be suspended now. And I don't know, like a suspension means that maybe they'll still be playable in the end, but it's definitely not going to be in this form. They mentioned how there's a lot of commons and rares in the coming set that can create infinite combos with this card. I think that there's honestly a lot of when effects in the first set for uniques, and that gets a little dangerous because it only takes like one more card with like a similar effect that has synergy together to create infinite combos. We've seen them with other cards and things as well already, but this one's definitely the easiest to pull off. And personally, I think that this card was really good even without an infinite combo. In the last expansion, I would have played 3 of these and nothing that could like do an infinite combo just because I thought it was so good on its own. A lot of people are saying like, oh, if you have a removal, this isn't good at all or something like that, but it's still pretty good on its own. If you can just get 2 boosts, then you've already summoned like 3 bodies and whatever stats this has, plus 4/4/4, plus the boost. And if you can get like 3 boosts all of a sudden, you basically have like 8/8/8 plus in stats for a 3-cost card across multiple bodies. That's really good. And even if your opponent has a removal, if you use like an on-play boosting effect, which is probably how I'd try and play this in my deck, you're going to get a minimum of 2 tokens before they even have the chance to remove it. So at that point, it's like even if they do, they're going to be behind in stats. And if they don't, you'll just run away with the game even more. These were very powerful, and I'm not surprised to see this change. Honestly, I do hope, though, that they can try and leave these at least playable in some degree moving forward, especially with how expensive uniques have been. It'd be kind of nice if people that own these could still use them. I feel like the Robin Hood errata, especially on double tax Robins, was a little harsh because they made the effect redundant so that the second instance was a complete waste, making those cards basically unplayable, probably even worse than like the single tax Robins that were in existence. And so, yeah, I feel like that was definitely a little unfortunate for some players. Hopefully, I'm wishing that this card can still at least summon like maybe like 2 brass bugs. I don't think though they really want to put limits on their cards from what I've heard. So I don't think they're going to say like limit 2 times per turn or like up to twice per turn if you boost a character. That would though probably be my like preferred errata. I think if it was limited to 2 times per turn, it could still have the potential to get like 666 worth of stats for 3, which is like a pretty good unique while being far from busted. And I think that that would maybe leave it in a place where people who own these can still be like pretty happy to play it without maybe making it like a problem for those who feel like they don't have access to it. I'm sure there's a lot of other changes they could do, like adding an extra cost to its effect or something, but I do feel like if they do that, like you have to pay 1 to summon the bug, it gets pretty close to unplayable. And if they really make it like once per turn or something, it's not really special at all anymore. So yeah, I'm pretty curious to see the change they make here, and yeah, I hope it's something that leaves it like in a good position. Next up, we've got the Moonlight Jellyfish here. Yeah, this card and the previous one, they do say that they were fine in the Beyond the Gates meta, and they're nerfing them preemptively here because they think they get maybe like too good with Trial by Frost. A lot of people who have been excited to play Lindua and were like waiting for her time have probably been picking these up because they are really good in the deck. And yeah, now they're also suspended, so not sure what the change is going to be. I think they mentioned here especially there are some that have like crazy effects that allow you to even return themselves to your hand, creating like essentially infinite 1-cost sacrifices with 1 card. From what I've usually seen, most of them only let you do it with another copy, which I feel like is probably hard enough it's okay and super easy to sabotage. But yeah, I think this one here they're saying maybe is one that could infinitely return itself because you would sacrifice it to resupply and then activate the other effect afterwards. Apparently, I think maybe it would go to reserve, and then you would use that second effect to discard a card from your reserve, basically the one that you resupplied into, to return a card from your reserve to your hand, and now it's already there. I think most of them, though, when they get sacrificed, they return the card in the same effect line, so it doesn't work that way, but possibly it seems that's what they're saying this one could do. I haven't tested it personally to know if it is as good as like the armorers are, but they have been pretty expensive, and it is maybe nice that that just kind of off the table. There are a lot of uniques that I would say are at least as good as this, if not even better maybe, that didn't make it on this list. I think this first time they're only going to have a couple on here, and maybe it's just kind of like a trial run and feeling things out. The cards that they picked here are all ones with an effect that appears exclusively on 1 card name, which too I think makes it pretty easy to do that first errata, more so than some of the effects that are very strong that appear on multiple names of all sorts of cards. I think they do say that in the future they might do an errata for like a text line and not just a specific name or something. And so it's definitely on their radar, but I think that would be a little harder to start. Honestly, though, now that some of these changes are being announced, I definitely think there are a lot of Beyond the Gates uniques out there that are still significantly better than the power level we're seeing in Trial by Frost. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of them follow the cards that are being announced today. So yeah, definitely be careful and responsible when buying cards. It'll be interesting for the market. I think a lot of the busted uniques prices might go down now because people are worried about nerfs and erratas, but with the way they announced the patches being every 2 months pretty much, this might also be the best time to buy because you can at least get 2 months out of it and then maybe try and resell it after some of like the coming big tournaments before like the next patch. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see the falling out of this. I think one of the hardest parts for a lot of people is that there's so much money flying around. If these cards were like $1 and they got nerfed, I feel like people wouldn't be that sad because then they could just go buy another equally good card for $1. But it is really hard right now when the price tag on a lot of cards like these can be like $400 or so, because if a card like this does get nerfed at this point, now it can be almost impossible to get like a deck of that same strength, especially now that you can't sell your investment. I'm sure a lot of people out there will think like, oh, well, you should just like be more responsible and not buy it to begin with. But I really hope in the long run that that's not like a decision that players have to make, where they have to pick between saving money and playing a worse deck, or like spending a lot to be able to have like a top tier deck. I mean, it's kind of it's just like a bad feeling if your only reason for not playing a card is like a financial one. So I'm glad to like see some of these being addressed. I think they're like one change that I hope to see moving forward too is maybe powerful uniques being a little bit more frequent. It is really fun to play the craziest uniques, and I think that outliers are always going to slip through. There's no way they're going to prevent all outliers and really like keep uniques within like a tight bound. And so if outliers that are going to be like better than average will exist already, maybe they could just purposely put some powerful effects that they've tested and know are healthy. If there aren't ones that are like pretty good to look forward to, it also maybe isn't as exciting to open packs, or like there aren't really chase cards. But I'm sure with some of the existing Beyond the Gates uniques, or like outliers, some people will have really strong uniques that can go up in price. And so honestly, maybe one good way to combat that is just, yeah, like putting that drop rate around like 20% or something for a unique that is pretty good, so that we can all have like some of these fun but not like too overpowered cards. And if they are that consistent, then I feel like the price will go down enough where even if they had to like nerf one, people wouldn't be too upset because they wouldn't have put as much money into it. That's going to take us now to the rare cards. I really do think that this patch is kind of like a trial run here. They're nerfing 3 uniques, 1 rare card, 1 common, and 1 hero. Basically like one of everything. They're taking out like the one most problematic card in each rarity, I feel like, to maybe like kind of see how we respond, or like see maybe like the impacts. But I wouldn't be surprised moving forward maybe if they hit a couple more cards after this. Both of the cards they're taking out for the rare and the common are the one with the highest win rate. The reasoning isn't that it like creates a bad play experience or a lot of things, but a lot of it is just that drawing these increases your win percentage. The ones they did pick are very valid. A lot of people have been frustrated by Bravos Bastion, and they mentioned that increases your win rate by 14% when you draw it. Honestly, that might even be lower than I expected. I'm very surprised that decks like Trace and things have a 49% win rate when they don't draw Bravos Bastion. That's honestly kind of hard to believe, but if that's really true, then I guess they're not even going to hurt that much if this card is suspended. I would be curious though to see like what the win rate is for some of those decks moving forward. The timing's interesting because since they are bringing in so many new cards, I honestly didn't even think that like Trace was going to be in the top of the meta. He got a lot less support that fits into like the current version of his deck than a lot of the other heroes. I think there's a ton of ones that could have rose up and maybe even been better than him with or without unique. So it's interesting because it will be a little sad if like some decks like Trace maybe when they do this errata are hurt enough that like they're not viable anymore, especially when like other decks are getting stronger. Maybe they would have been like as good, and maybe an errata or something wouldn't be necessary. So I think that suspension honestly again is a great idea. Maybe if they see like the power level of the new set, they can be a little more reserved with the nerf. If not, be a little more aggressive. It sounds like they're saying that even removing just the resupply text line they think might not be enough with future sets. That's interesting. I feel like if they look too far into the future, they might be like nerfing a card that would be perfectly fine now, or we could still get like a little bit more enjoyment out of. If they're only going to really want to errata something once though, it seems like they might be pretty brutal before we really even understand the reasoning. We're going to see that with one of the cards here a little bit later on the list. A lot of times they're like, yeah, with our future sets, or like way down the line, we are realizing cards we already printed will be a problem. Next here, we're going to be seeing Ozma. This is apparently the common with the best win rate. They're taking out, though, the rare as well because, honestly, yeah, if you got rid of the common, you could just easily swap it in and not even really notice the difference. For this one, it's only for Ortis, and for the last one, it was only the Bravos Bastion for Axiom. It is honestly kind of interesting there, though, too. If they changed the Axiom one and not the Bravos one, that connection might be, like, a little weird. So Yeah, I am curious to see how they would like patch it to still have it like feel like it fits within the family well. For this Ozma, they mentioned they don't want to just change the cost to 3 because then it's too close to Baba Yaga and they're not really sure what to do yet. This is an interesting card to hit. It is really good, but it's honestly one of the cards that I liked the most from Beyond the Gates. I really enjoyed having a slightly bigger hand because I felt like it gave me more flexibility and I could have like more opportunities to be strategic and have like more decision making. The more cards you have, the more decision making you have. That's honestly something that I'm like wanting to watch closely with these changes. Is I hope they can maybe like make changes in a way that brings more decisions into the game and things and more opportunities, because I feel like that's like a fun thing for the players. And if you get too limited, it can, yeah, just like maybe have like a worse play experience where you're frustrated because it feels like you have less control over what's going on. I don't think though that we're having that problem completely with Ozma, because it's just kind of bringing you into the same realm of the as the other decks already are in. I personally was like thinking for a while maybe they could just give other decks more draw to kind of like balance this out, and then they're all kind of getting like some of the benefits of this card. But it seems like instead they're going to be bringing this one down. I am hoping that maybe they just make the effect like only from hand or something, um, so that it's just like doesn't completely lose its identity and like completely become unplayable. I feel like getting 2 cards for 1, especially on a common, is really good. It's kind of embarrassing when you look at like Ada Lovelace next to it, which is a rare, and it only gets 1 draw with like the same stat line and everything. But yeah, I hope they can like find a healthy change for this that leaves it playable. I mean, the art and things is so good. It'll be sad if it completely leaves all of our decks. And that takes us to what to me was the most exciting and brutal change on the list. Waru Mack, he just lost Robin Hood. He can't catch a break. Now they're going to be absolutely gutting this card as well. Not only is it going to be losing the ability to summon a token at noon if you control a bureaucrat, but as well, it's going to be changing so that whenever you play a bureaucrat, it gains a sleep and you no longer have the decision. This card is pretty surprising to me. Most of the other cards on the list for the uniques, basically the reasoning is they're too good in Trial by Frost with the changing card pool and things. That's pretty understandable. They don't want to maybe have their prices shoot up if they know they're going to have to ban them a couple months in. That would just be like pretty dramatic and things. So that's a fair change. For the rare and the common, they're like, oh, they're the highest play rate. They increase the win percentage. Yeah, maybe we want to get rid of some of those cards that can really polarize your games. I talked about that previously in one of my most recent videos where I was saying certain cards, specifically like Bravo's Bastion, that can really change your win percentages just by drawing them. I feel like that takes a little bit away from the strategic aspect of the game. But this card, totally different reasons here. Apparently they're saying that they're changing this one primarily just because of how good it is with cards that are coming in the future, and just like with some of the interactions, they think that it's a little bit too strong. The timing on this though is really interesting to me, because after the Robin Errata, Waru maybe topped a couple times, but it was not performing well competitively. It was definitely just like a B or an A tier deck. I feel like maybe with the right pilot and things you could do really well, but I did kind of like that it seemed like it was a deck that was really hard to play, and so while a couple people could be rewarded in tournaments for bringing it, it wasn't just like so obviously overbearing anymore that everyone wanted to play it. I feel like there's definitely a place in games like this to have like a deck that can reward the strategic players, but it sounds like here in the article they're saying that they think it's going to maintain a lot of that strategic depth and that it'll still be good moving forward. Especially if they're going to be doing changes though every 2 months, or at least considering it. I'm a little surprised that they aren't waiting to do this a little bit later. I feel like this is really going to hurt Waru's power level, and I don't expect it to be a strong contender in the coming expansion. I think there is a decent amount of support in the coming expansion, but a lot of the cards I thought weren't quite as good as some of the stuff from Beyond the Gates anyways. So I personally didn't think he was getting like a crazy amount of support. I don't think we'll ever really get to know though now, because a lot of the cards that I thought weren't very good, like the ones that remove sleep and stuff, to give your character like anchored or a boost and things. Before, I felt like you didn't need them because you could just play the character awake, but now I guess they're almost going to be required. I feel like yeah, this is pretty crazy because you lost two benefits. You lost like the benefit of sleeping a character to gain more advantage later, which kind of made up for the early tempo loss, and you lost the flexibility. In a vacuum now, I'm pretty sure this effect is literally like a negative power level because getting a card today is probably like better for value than one that's delayed, and especially like on the last day of the game, if you play cards asleep, you're not even going to be able to get them to be awake on the next day because the game's already over. Obviously, with specific cards, they can always design things that work really well with this and create bureaucrats that generate a lot of advantage from being asleep. But it is pretty interesting to see like a hero with such a weak effect that like unless you have a card that gets a benefit from it or like has a powerful interaction with it in a vacuum, I don't think this really creates any advantage for you at all, which I think it's like we're now kind of the only hero to do it. But it does sound like there's a lot of powerful cards and things on the way that will be really good with this, and I trust that they're not going to let this hero completely die off. I am sad as someone who was a Waru main. This change is very harsh up front. I'm sure when we get future support and things that, as they say, like it can be competitive. But since the deck was not that dominant after the change, it's interesting. They say like Waru Mack was the star of Beyond the Gates. I feel like that's a little bit of an overstatement. Waru Mack was the star of the first half of Beyond the Gates. I don't know if like Waru Mack really was on the radar too much in the second half. Like it was fine, but I think like at that point like Traced and Sigismar were the stars. Yeah, it's interesting. Like this is getting nerfed, but like Sigismar was pretty much universally considered the better of the two heroes in the second half of Beyond the Gates, and now with this change and stuff, it's going to be even weaker for a while until we get that support that they're talking about. Yeah, I can really see some of these changes are probably making a lot of you upset. I think overall, though, this is definitely a good sign for the game. It's almost impossible to get balances right every time without like the playtesting of the worldwide community. And so, yeah, I think that patches like this are necessary. Hopefully, if there are any overcorrections, Equinox can maybe go against their rule and do a second attempt at an errata. But I don't think that'll necessarily be the case for any of these. I am very glad overall to see Equinox putting effort into monitoring the power levels of the different cards and like win rates and things. And yeah, like being proactive to even like make some of these changes before things become a problem to really just make sure that we have like the best play experience. I think a lot of people have responded negatively initially, and while maybe some of these changes are harsh in the moment, or there will always be some people that lose out while others win on a ban list, I think overall that this is definitely a step in the right direction, and it makes me excited personally for where the game is going. But definitely be patient with others who might be expressing frustration, because I think there are a lot of very valid reasons to do so. There are people with outstanding print-on-demand orders from the beta that are now going to be receiving cards that they've paid for that like are maybe no longer playable, or maybe just for like a deck that they no longer want to use. I'm curious to see if Equinox lets people like revise their print-on-demand orders or how things like that turn out. And at the bottom of this article, they do mention that they're going to be trying to come up with some type of compensation, or yeah, like maybe a way to make it up to the people who are impacted. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like. I would be surprised if it's much more than like a free print on demand of the card or something like that. But yeah, who knows? They could definitely do a lot, like maybe even let you exchange it for a card of like the same rarity or something, since they can really get flexible with the digital system. I'm pretty curious to see what that is. While this brought us a ton of answers, there are still a lot of loose ends here that'll be just like interesting to watch resolve in the coming weeks. Let me know in the comments, which of these were you the most surprised about or frustrated by? Are you going to be worried to buy expensive cards now, or are you just running back out there to find the new best uniques now that we've seen some go into suspension? What do you think they're gonna do for the changes for some of these too? While like Waru already has the errata listed out here, most of them are just suspended, and so we're kind of still waiting to see the results. So definitely let me know your guesses in the comments. Thanks for sticking it out through the video. This was definitely an interesting article to read, and yeah, some interesting content to think about. I'm sure in the coming days my thoughts and feelings on some of these things will shift, or like I might have new realizations that I missed from this in the moment. But yeah, with such a big change, I just really wanted to get this video out there quickly. If you stuck around this long, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and just like the meta's going to be saying to this guy, see you later.